Welcome to the RealTea Podcast, brought to you by Tennessee Realtors and sponsored by Rule First, helping you live closer to what matters. I'm your host, Angela Shields. This podcast is created for Tennessee Realtors to get the tea on all things real estate in Tennessee. We'll bring you engaging conversations with esteemed guests in the real estate industry and cover a wide array of topics, including current events, governmental affairs, education, and legal updates. I am really excited about today's podcast. We have a very special guest with us that is very informative. I'd like to welcome Josh DeVine with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, the TBI. And today we are going to talk about really cybersecurity. Before we do, we have a tradition here.
Uh-oh.
We are called the RealTea Podcast.
Right.
And so what I like to do is I like to ask everyone, what do you like in your teacup?
Usually it's black coffee.
Black coffee. That is
Yes.
the most popular answer that we get.
Well, we've got 3 kids, right? So I have an 8-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old, and someone is usually crying in our house at any given hour of the day. So sleep is few and far between. So I am a highly caffeinated suburban dad.
You need
these
that
days.
caffeine.
Regularly, yes.
That is great. That is great. So let's just kind of jump in because you are a wealth of knowledge, and we are so thankful that you came to talk to us because cybersecurity is so important in our industry. So let me just ask you the question, What makes realtors an attractive target for cyber criminals?
Well, you're absolutely right. Realtors can be a major target for cybersecurity issues. And if you think about it, it's because these are individuals who specialize in large financial transactions. So you better believe they're going to have a bullseye on them, right? Because they are dealing with large amounts of money. They are dealing with multiple entities. Thinking of a title situation where you've got a client, you've got a title, you've got a realtor. There's a lot of an exchange of information that's going on here. And there are opportunities at several of those turns, if you're a bad actor, to kind of insert yourself into the situation and make something go south. And that's why I think this is really an important conversation. We want everyone to think about cybersecurity because it is just one of those pressing issues that's impacting public safety, not just in Tennessee, but nationally.
Right.
And I think it's an important thing for those people like realtors who deal with large sums of money in transactions to especially think about.
And we've been hearing about this for so long now, but I think it's getting more and more sophisticated.
Very much so. And we're seeing the advent of artificial intelligence, AI, is really a game changer in this particular space because our advice 4 or 5 years ago, and usually we see this sort of stuff with romance scams. You know, someone on Facebook gets a friend request from somebody they don't know. They strike up a conversation, and then the conversation takes a turn toward money. And our advice used to be 4 or 5 years ago, hey, if you feel like you're having this conversation with somebody and you need to check to make sure that they're really who they say they are, just do a quick FaceTime with them. Well, now we can't really do that anymore because we're starting to see these AI tools. Google recently launched a really crazily impressive one a few weeks ago that was making a lot of news headlines. These AI tools are able to create videos that are so realistic, it is incredibly difficult to sort out truth from fiction.
Oh, that's scary.
It's very scary, and that's why our common sense advice is usually centered around if it seems too good to be true, it is absolutely too good to be true.
Is, yes. Yeah. So when you think about, if you were talking to a room full of realtors, what would you tell them some of the common types of cyber attacks or cyber crimes? What would those be that you would warn them about?
And fortunately, we have some special agents at TBI in our Cybercrime and Digital Evidence Unit who are even way smarter than I am.
I can't believe that.
Yes, absolutely. They are the ones who really specialize in this on a day-to-day basis. So I just want to make sure I'm pulling the best stuff for you guys from this. So there are really... They indicated that there are 3 that we primarily see here that really can impact folks in the real estate space. And one of them has to do with pig butchering, so investment scams.
Yes.
So this would be a situation where you have the opportunity to invest money in cyber cryptocurrency, but you're never going to get that money back. And so they keep asking for more, and then when it comes time for you to draw out your money as an investment, you have to pay them more. And it just is a vicious cycle, and you're never going to get your money out of that. We also see cyber attacks and issues impacting realtors as it relates to business email compromise. This is a huge problem, phishing scams, that sort of thing. And that's a huge loss as well. You know, in 2024, it was estimated to be more than a $2 billion loss in the United States. In Tennessee alone, more than $47 million in 2024, just because of business email compromise. So that's something that folks who run businesses and have these sorts of enterprises really need to think about the security for themselves, the security and best practices for the people who work for them, all of that. And then we also see ransomware and data breaches as well. So individuals who gain access to client databases, for example, or otherwise personal identifying information, or PII, and then hold that hostage and demand money in payment. So those would be a few of the big ones that we see in the space.
Right. So the pig butchering, the National Association of Realtors has really been putting that out to our realtor members just recently. And apparently there have been realtors that have been impacted by this across the country. And they told us that a lot of times it's where realtors get text from just random numbers and they respond to them because they think it might be a customer or a client. It starts out with the, hello, can you call me? Or I'm interested, or just a random text that they receive. Is that what you're seeing here in Tennessee when
that can absolutely be it, you know, in terms of just getting unsolicited contact in one way or another. And obviously realtors rely on a lot of that to a certain extent for their business, right? And so it really requires realtors to be discerning and to vet things, but then to also be very cautious. Opportunities may not really be opportunities.
Right.
They might be opportunities for somebody else in terms of a bad actor wanting to take advantage of you, but you just got to stop, and you have to think, and you have to have best practices, and you have to remember at the end of the day, if it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Probably is. And they were also explaining to us that the reason it's called pig butchering is because you think about what you do, the farmers do, is they fatten up the pig, and then they end up slaughtering it when it gets such a big size.
Exactly.
And that's kind of the name of the scam, because that's what they're doing, is getting these pots of money. Then that's when they cash it out. Bigger and bigger.
Yeah. And then they want to cash out, and then they realize they've been scammed and they're not getting any of it back. That's horrible.
Yeah. Horrible.
And we've seen cases with some huge losses. And we see it often with folks who are older in age, perhaps a little more trusting of individuals. And we've seen in some cases people lose their life savings. And that's tragic.
Very tragic.
And it's very serious, for sure.
Is this something that our realtors could help educate their clients and customers the way that they did when they were helping with their loans? They were putting information out to say, maybe don't respond to these types of texts, or something along those lines? Yeah,
I think absolutely. And it would really be a service to clients for realtors to be thinking about cybersecurity throughout the entire transaction process. You know, really normalizing a lot of the kind of language around cybersecurity in those conversations would be helpful. You know, things like, we always recommend stronger cybersecurity when dealing with your money, those sorts of things, using clear and simple language, you know, sharing some real world examples if they've had a run-in with anything problematic in the past, that sort of thing. So we really want to make sure that people know that it is important to never rely on email, you know, solely for financial transactions. And probably the best piece of advice we have is that realtors should never send wiring instructions to clients, only to the title company.
Right.
Yeah.
Very important.
Very important. So and that's where we can see in these financial transactions things go south, obviously. Maybe it's one of those situations where cyber criminals can gain access to the title company's employee email account and then provide alternate wiring instructions just days before closing. So at any step in the process, a bad actor may potentially gain access to data or information that could ruin a real estate transaction, number one, but also cause a lot of financial upheaval.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that I know that we've heard of in the past is where they get hold of emails and they start sending emails. They watch what emails happen, so they start even speaking as though they are you, and they're giving instructions, or they're saying, I know of a colleague that had emails sent in the office that said, wire this money. I'm out of town, so wire this money for me. And the employee did this thinking it actually came from that executive.
Sure.
So how does that type of thing even happen?
They're sneaky, aren't they? Right? It's one of those where you've got to pay attention to some red flags. So I've got 5 good ones here.
Okay.
So the 5 red flags that our folks really recommend is that you should watch for any change that occurs during the final stages of closing, right? As we get closer to the closing table, there could potentially be something that doesn't feel normal, that feels outside of what you would expect. That should be a red flag to you, number 1. Number 2, if there's a slight change to an email address or the domain looks different, right? That should obviously be a red flag. If you're used to it being at NashvilleTitleCompany.com and it's at NashvilleTitleCo.com.
Right.
That might be a big red flag that there's a problem there with that. If the language is suddenly really urgent or pressing, or they need you to act now, probably a red flag as well. So be on the lookout for that. Obviously, things that we always recommend when we're talking cybersecurity, if there's major grammatical errors or spelling errors, or doesn't seem like it's the normal cadence of what you'd expect in a business email, that can be a red flag. And then lastly, wiring instructions sent as an attachment should also be a red flag. If you get a PDF with those instructions, should give you pause for sure. So just these sort of common sense things can be really good gates to protect yourself.
So again, something the realtor could be explaining to their customers and clients that these are red flags to watch for. If you have questions, call me. Do not respond.
You know, as someone who's not a realtor and has done a few real estate transactions, it would be really great, and I would see it as next level customer service for my realtor, to get a handout.
Oh,
you know,
yes.
if I was able to get a deal under contract, it'd be great to say, okay, now that we're almost to the closing table, this is when we might see a cybersecurity incident, and just probably won't happen, but just in the off chance, here's what I want you to look out for.
Right.
I would feel really well taken care of.
Right. And I think many do that type of practice, but to go an extra step to make sure that they understand the red flags to watch for.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great idea.
Because
to do that.
As someone who doesn't do this professionally, there's still, it's really confusing, right?
Yes.
And there is a lot going on, so many moving parts. You're dealing with your mortgage company, the title company, your real estate agent, the seller, all of it. And so for someone to say, hey, this could happen, and I just want you to be prepared, I would feel really well taken care of.
Rule First not only lends rule, but lives rule too. And as a cooperative, they can offer products and services other lenders aren't able to. From construction to land loans to financing homes in the country, they'll walk you through the process to make your rural dreams a reality. And because community matters, they're committed to investing in the communities they're a part of. Learn how you can get closer to what matters at rulefirst.com. Rule First is a registered trademark of Farm Credit Mid-America, NMLS 407249. Equal housing lender, loans subject to approval and eligibility. Just off the top of my head, I know we hear about these types of things on TV and how they track back to people across the world that by the time you try to track them down, do you ever find the perpetrator?
From time to time, we do. And from time to time, they're not in the United States. You're absolutely right. You know, this is a global issue, because these bad actors have found that if they can scale up, you think about all of the junk text messages and junk calls you get. Well, if just 0.5% falls victim, that still is going to pay off, especially if you've scaled up the way some of these criminal enterprises have. Mm-hmm. And so we work with our colleagues at FBI and international colleagues as well in pursuing these cases, because we do want to find the people responsible for them if we're able to hold them accountable, for sure.
So what are some of the things that a realtor or anyone in the public, a consumer, a client, what can we do to help protect ourselves?
Sure. So a couple of recommendations for you that I think are really important. If someone contacts you and you don't know them, do not release any financial information or your personal identifying information, and do not send any money, right? If you don't know them, pump the brakes. Mm-hmm. You can't dive headfirst into these types of things these days. It's just not good practice. Do not invest anything on the advice of someone you meet solely online. Mm-hmm. You got to meet them face to face. You got to have a conversation with them over the phone. You got to do your due diligence before you get excited about an investment opportunity. Be suspicious, again, is number 3. If it's too good to be true, I'm going to beat the drum around that, because as much as we say that, people just forget it. Mm-hmm. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And then make sure, sometimes in these pig butchering schemes especially, this can be really emotional, and it can be really devastating, and it can really lead victims to some really dark places. Mm-hmm. So you have to, if you find yourself in a position where you are a victim, by all means report it, right? Because we can help. In some small measure, we can help. And sometimes help might look like getting you mental health services or working with you to make sure that you have someone to support you, because we have seen some victims that have been in some really low places because they feel frankly stupid that they've made a mistake, and it's been so detrimental to their future. And at the end of the day, we all make mistakes, right? We all can do things in the moment because we think that it's the best thing, but get taken advantage of and get tricked. And I think that the more we can normalize that, the better off we're going to be at protecting people long term.
Well, some are so sophisticated. It would be easy to be taken advantage of if you aren't really just catching it. So I can see where somebody would feel horrible because they all of a sudden were the victim, and they would have never seen themselves being a victim. Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. Awful. Are there other types of, we're focused really on real estate, but do you see other types of scams that just come to mind quickly that you might point out that people are running into? I know before we went on to the podcast, you were mentioning the romance scams and different things like that. Yeah. What other ones are popular?
So romance scams are still incredibly popular. And so this really impacts predominantly older individuals who may be widowed or maybe divorced. And all of a sudden they get a friend request from someone who looks handsome or beautiful, and then it can sort of go from there, and then usually turns to money pretty quickly. Impacting younger populations, we're seeing sextortion scams where individuals have been tricked into sending compromising images to individuals who then threaten to share those more broadly with people in that person's circle.
We've seen on the news that impacts kids a lot.
Kids a lot,
yes.
And so I think that there are some really important conversations that parents and families need to be having around digital access and safeguards and boundaries around internet access and social media usage and those sorts of things. So all of these things are really prevalent these days. The more and more that our world and our businesses rely on technology, the more we're going to see people coming up with new ways to try to take advantage of individuals.
And we've seen this has been going on for quite some time, where a photo will be stolen off of one of the advertisements and then re-advertised as a fake listing. And then a consumer will contact that person thinking that they are renting a property or going to see a property, put down a down payment or for a lease or what have you, and then come to find out that was a scam. Have you heard that?
Absolutely. Yeah. My advice in that sort of situation is don't just chalk it up to an expensive mistake and move on. Report that to law enforcement.
Yes.
Because if it's happened to you, it's probably happened to someone else.
Other
And
places.
that's problematic. You know, in the world of cybersecurity, it seems like my judgment is that people don't often feel comfortable stepping forward as a victim and admitting that they've been victimized. We need people to do that because that's the only way law enforcement is able to build connections and build stronger cases and show patterns of criminal enterprises doing this sort of thing are through the people who are brave enough to step up and say, it happened to me too, right? It may not be a really comfortable thing to do, but that can be invaluable in terms of giving information that can help piece together cases.
So on that note, if a realtor were to find their listing, if a victim hasn't turned it in, can a realtor turn it in that they found their listing on a site that's been advertised?
Sure.
Great.
Sure. Yeah.
That's good to know.
By all means. I mean, because at the end of the day, information might feel insignificant to you, but it might be really significant to an investigating agency who's noticed a pattern or working a pattern, and it might be the one thing that helps link 2 or 3 things together, honestly. So you never know the value of a piece of information until you actually have it in the context of the whole puzzle.
They would know to contact that advertising firm to say
Sure.
take it down.
Sure.
I don't know that they would necessarily know who to turn that into to say, I found it. Would that be the TBI? Would it be the FBI?
Sure. So we would welcome tips at tips to TBI
Okay.
at tbi.tn.gov. Another great resource is the Internet Crime Center through the FBI at ic3.gov. We like to refer a lot of our cybersecurity folks who might feel like they've been victimized to IC3 because usually cybersecurity issues are not Tennessee specific, right? They're not just targeting
Sure.
our state's residents. So there can oftentimes be a multi-state nexus at play. And that's obviously something that's going to rise to a federal level as well.
Good information. Thank you. When you think of a broker who has several agents under them, is there advice that you might give them to help them teach their agents to be safer, to watch out for fraud?
Absolutely. I think brokers need to really champion best practices when it comes to cybersecurity. They really need to step up to the plate and make sure that their business model, their technology, their best practices, especially I'm thinking around, something as simple as 2-factor authentication, right? That can be something that can be a lifesaver these days. And I would certainly recommend that wherever it's available for people to take advantage of that. And so I think that there's also a great resource through the Department of Homeland Security called the CISA Cybersecurity Framework, which can really help folks who run businesses have a good, comprehensive 360-degree toolbox, so to speak, when it comes to making sure that they're buckled up as they need to be when it comes to cybersecurity.
Where can they learn more about that?
Online, and we will have a web link in the show notes.
Okay, great. That's fantastic. If somebody was trying to learn just more about cybersecurity in general, is there a safe place they can go and
Absolutely,
learn?
yeah. So we have information about cybersecurity on our website at tn.gov/TBI. If you look under the key issues page, we have a whole cybersecurity page there where we have information and resources around the common cybersecurity issues that we're seeing. We have some really easy to understand videos around romance scams and sextortion. We're committed to doing what we can to monitor these sorts of issues, and as we're able to build out some good storytelling around the things that we need people to know.
Fantastic. When it comes to cryptocurrency and things along that line, is there anything we need to know about cryptocurrency, kind of introducing that into the marketplace? I know that's still fairly new. I think some are adopting it more, but is there anything about cryptocurrency we need to be careful about?
We see some cryptocurrency scams, obviously, pig butchering being one of them. And we also see cryptocurrency increasingly with some of our jury duty scams, honestly, where people are getting contacted that they missed jury duty and they need to pay this fine or any number of things. We're seeing that a lot of these bad actors are trying to move people into cryptocurrency. We suspect because there's kind of some confusion around what cryptocurrency even is, right? And how do you navigate it? How do you deal with it? That sort of thing. And so I think that it would be on people to sort of see any kind of conversation that shifts into cryptocurrency as a potential red flag. So maybe it gives you pause.
It's interesting that you brought up you missed jury duty, because we hear about that a lot, that you get those phone calls about jury duty. Or it's funny, my husband this morning got a voicemail because he doesn't answer calls he doesn't recognize, that you didn't pay your property taxes. So that's another one that we hear about a lot. And it's exactly that either you have to pay this fine or else they're coming to pick you up.
Yes.
From
and
the
arrest you immediately.
Yeah, arrest you
exactly.
immediately. It used to be that you had to have gift cards available for them. So are there other scams like that? And what should people do when they get those calls?
Yeah, so my best advice when you get that kind of call that you're thinking to yourself, did I miss this payment, right, is to do a little bit of homework yourself. Don't just take it for granted and tap the link that they send you and go down that rabbit hole. Instead, call the court system, call the clerk, call the state's Department of Safety and Homeland Security. There's been a huge problem with these unpaid toll texts that everyone's been getting.
That's the other one.
Totally a scam as well. So it's kind of one of those where if somebody is reaching out to you and saying you owe them money, do the due diligence to kind of ignore it in the moment, and then call that entity to say, hey, I got this text or I got this call. I'm just trying to figure out, is this legitimate, right? And I would venture a guess that 9.5 times out of 10, they're going to say, totally a scam. You can ignore it.
So it's okay if you answer to hang up on them?
Oh, absolutely.
To disconnect that call?
And our best advice, honestly, is if you don't know the number these days, don't answer.
Don't answer it.
Yeah. And I would tell anyone who has especially elderly individuals in their life, maybe they're taking care of mom, dad, grandparents, that kind of thing, really reiterate that. It's not rude these days. It's just common sense.
Yeah.
And that's been our very bottom line message to folks because, again, that older population, they really are so trusting, and they see it as so rude to not answer the phone or respond to a text message that they might get. But these days you just can't, because you're probably not getting contacted by someone who has the best interests at play.
Yeah. I think the problem with the realtors is they get so many calls from people that they don't know because they put their number out there.
Of course.
To call because of the nature of their business. So they do answer. But I think the important thing is to remember, don't take those calls.
Yeah.
To go ahead and hang up. You can call back, let those go to your voicemail or what have you. And then use that blocking.
Yeah. And you can usually tell within 5 or 10 seconds whether it's a legitimate person or not.
Right.
And if it's not, hang up, be done with it, block the number, move on, that kind of thing.
And when you do block those numbers, do they just call from a different number?
Yes.
Unfortunately.
They are smart, and they are very, very insistent. I mean, even to this day, my phone rang while we were chatting. You might have heard it. I'm betting that was probably a scammer trying to call me, because my work number is out there, and so it's just in their database. And no matter how many times I tell them I'm on the do not call registry, no matter how many times I say I work for the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, they continue to call. Their business depends on it. Right? Their business depends on the persistence and, again, scaling to size in hopes that a small fraction of people will fall victim.
I was in a conversation the other day, and it got brought up about when you block and when you use the delete and report. Somebody said, well, who are we reporting to? Are we reporting to Apple, or are you reporting to your telephone provider, where's it going?
It depends on the platform.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for example, in Gmail, I believe that it goes to Google, right? And they're logging it as reported, that sort of thing. So, depends on the provider.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's funny. Well, is there any other scams or anything else that you would want people to know about cybersecurity?
We've talked through pretty much everything that we're dealing with these days. It's just one of those topics where we know what we know right now. 6 months from now, we could have the same conversation and it will look totally different. And I think that's the nature of this particular kind of crime. It's very cat and mouse, right? It's we understand something, we know what they're doing, and then they do something different. And then we understand what they're doing with that, and then they do something different. So it's just one of those things where we're always, I think, all of us, regardless of what we do, are going to have to keep a pulse on it and keep up to date with the best practices around security and personal security and that sort of thing, and make sure that we're buttoned up to the best of the recommendations as well as we can be. And please don't forget that common sense. You know,
Right.
At the end of the day, your gut tells you, right? Your gut tells you if something is legit or not legitimate, and you should trust your gut a little bit more.
I feel like there's so many other topics we could bring you back to discuss. So don't be surprised if we don't call you
Okay.
again. Have a part 2 on this. But I am going to do something for fun. So before we started this conversation, before we let you out of here, I learned something fun about you.
Oh, geez.
So it makes it so that we don't end on such a
Yeah, we don't want to be a
scary
bummer.
note,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So I learned you do another podcast
I do.
and host one. So I want to hear about
Yeah,
that.
so I'm big on work-life balance.
Yes.
And I think that
You would have to be. This has to be stressful.
You know, the job we have is really important.
Very.
And so I needed something that was completely unimportant in my life. And so I have a dear friend who lives in Mount Juliet. We actually met at church years ago, and she and her husband and me and my wife were really great friends, and we have kids in the same stage of life, that whole thing. And we both have an appreciation for the art form that is the Hallmark Christmas movie. And so we have a podcast where we chat about Hallmark movies, and usually we tell folks if we like them or not. So we will recap the plot of a Hallmark movie, and then we give gold or we give cold, dependent on whether we like the movie or don't like the movie. And so it's called Do You Watch What I Watch?
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
So I think that we have members who would tell you their job could get stressful and they would
What?
enjoy listening to that.
The world of real estate can be stressful?
Sometimes.
I'm shocked to hear that.
I think they might enjoy listening and tuning in just to
Yeah.
have that a little bit of relief.
It's
So
wildly frivolous. I mean, it's complete fluff,
I'm
but
sure
we
it's
have
fun.
fun doing it.
I'm
yeah.
sure it's fun. But I want to say that we appreciate everything that you do to try to keep the transactions safe and to try to track down these bad actors. And it is important what you do.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to come and share with you because, like I said, a lot of people on the surface may not think that realtors would be targets in this kind of way, but absolutely, like I said at the onset, the amount of large financial transactions y'all deal with can really put a bullseye on you. And so this is on all of us, but especially y'all to keep a close eye on.
Yes. And again, the tips and just bringing it top of mind, it is really important. So
Sure.
Don't be surprised if we call you and ask for a part 2.
Deal.
Thank you. And thank you for being here.
Happy to do it.
Thank you all for joining us today on the RealTea Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and colleagues. Then visit tnrealtors.com to submit your questions and topics for future episodes of the RealTea Podcast. Thanks for listening.